Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another wonderful tasting with the Virtual Tasting Society. I'm Vadim Perlovsky. Joining us today is the Scotch Malt Whiskey Society. We are super excited to learn more about this brand. They are a fantastic independent bottler with a long, beautiful history, and there's a lot to learn about them. And I'm excited to have Zach Kemble here to tell us all about it. Joining us, as always, is the Los Angeles Whiskey and Spirits Guild. Fantastic membership, awesome people. Thank you for joining us often and being lovely. David Donahue is the president of the guild. Do you want to take a couple words, David?
Thank you very much, Vadim. Would appreciate just a quick minute to express our sincere and heartfelt gratitude for all of the wonderful effort that you put into bringing the Los Angeles Whiskey and Spirits Guild these wonderful events. It's great to see a lot of familiar faces. If there's anybody new, welcome. Vadim will be doing a few best practices for these events. And so welcome. Looking forward to it.
Thank you so much, David. Yep, as David said, welcome to all of our regulars. Anybody who's here for the first time, thank you for joining us. We're happy to see you. We're happy to have you. Quick housekeeping. We are here to get nerdy and ask questions, so please don't hesitate. Use the chat. If you feel so inclined, you can unmute yourself. I mean, if Zach is cool with that. But we do ask that you stay muted unless you are actively participating. That way we don't have people talking over each other. And oftentimes you will forget that you're unmuted and have a conversation with someone else in the house, and we're all paying attention to that. So just keep yourself on mute unless you are asking a question or sharing tasting notes or what have you. But other than that, get nerdy, ask questions, share tasting notes in the chat. We are here to learn and to find new brands that we will love and participate with. Zach, do you want to introduce yourself? I know the order we're going to go in is the order that I had it in the description. So if anybody has the description pulled up, that's going to be the order. I know these are all always at cask strength, so I'm assuming we should pre-pour and let them open up, but you let us know. It's your show. But in that, feel free to introduce yourself, tell us all about the brand, and take it away.
All right. Well, thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it. I know this has been a long while in the making. A lot has happened since we first started talking, but I'm happy to be here. I do appreciate you guys all for coming. I really appreciate you guys having me. I am new to the Los Angeles area, so this is a very nice welcoming. I guess I can introduce myself. My name is Zach. I've been with the Scotch Malt Whiskey Society now since the beginning of 2019. In that time, we have grown substantially. As Vadim mentioned, we are an independent bottling club. We are actually the largest independent bottlers in the world. We've got, I believe, over 13,000 casks in our warehouse in Glasgow at the moment. So we have plenty of whiskey to go around. But on top of that, we are also a membership society. Because everything we do is single cask, we have 23, I think it is, branches around the world. With our newest members being New Zealand and South Africa. So these casks are split between countries every time. We do have a few exclusive casks that come where we get the entire bit. We can go over the labels in a little bit, but you'll notice bottle numbers on those labels. And because of that, we are available to members only. So this is super exciting to be able to have you guys taste some stuff before actually being members, which doesn't typically happen unless you have really nice friends. So this is always a lot of fun. It gives you guys kind of like a deep dive into what we have and kind of just a little, heads up as to what we can do. As Vadim mentioned, everything we have here is going to be cask strength. So please do not be afraid to add water, add ice cubes, whatever you guys want. We don't judge here. We're not a sniffy society. We are all friendly in every way. We always just say enjoy the whiskey the way you like it. We do recommend starting neat with nothing in it, just to see how it comes out, and then slowly adding water or whatever you want after the fact. But otherwise, yeah, I'm excited to be here. I have not had a tasting in quite some time, other than talking with Jenna on YouTube, who is my colleague. So this is exciting being around some others that have the same passion as I do for whiskey, and super excited to share with you guys. So I'm not really sure if you guys want to get into it or how you really want to do it.
However you want to. I guess the easiest thing to do, if you want to do, we can pour the first one and taste it, and you can tell us all about the brand and the history, and then we'll go through it.
No,
I was just going to say,
absolutely.
I'm really curious about how you guys got started. You guys
Yeah,
mentioned 13,000 casks in the different, 26, 23 places around the globe.
yeah.
And you don't have anything in Southern California, do you? Or do you?
Yeah, so that's actually a great idea. I'll get to those for you, Dave. But yeah, if you guys want, feel free to pre-pour. We kind of just fly by the skin of our teeth. I pre-pour two at a time. I sip through them. I talk a lot, so I don't drink a lot anyways. But you can pre-pour if you want. It does help open them up. Otherwise, it's not gonna burn your face off. Pour one at a time. But if you guys want, Vadim did mention there should be an order. Eliza, is it? Alyssa?
Elissa.
Alyssa. Perfect. She was kind enough, it looks like, to actually post that tasting order in the comments or in the chat. So if you guys want, we are going to start with the 63.74. And again, we'll get to that, just kind of explaining everything and how it works. But while you pour that, if you guys want to start sipping, just a little bit of the history of the society. We're founded back in 1983 is when we had our first official bottle. Our gentleman named Pip Hills was our founder. He had nothing to do with whiskey. He was not an influential person. He was not famous by any means. Just a guy that had a group of friends that all had common passions. He was a little bit into politics, and he essentially started chit-chatting with some friends. They all found a main interest, and they all kind of wanted to try whiskey. Believe it or not, how prices look and bottlings and all these old bottles. Single malt Scotch is not as old as you might think, at least not the process of bottling and selling by the masses. Back in the early 80s, blended whiskey was the big fad. People did not drink neat whiskey. They just Scotch and soda. It's a big deal. So back then, the market had not been capped by anybody. No big distilleries, nothing. So what they kind of did was, back in the day, a lot of these distilleries had family casks, similar to how Glenfarclas labels theirs, whereas families owned a cask that they got every year. And what so happened was Pip had a friend that they had been talking. He was a wealthy farmer up in the Highlands, kind of kept to himself, and knew of a family that no longer was taking their cask at Glenfarclas. And from there, Pip drove his station wagon from Edinburgh all the way up to Speyside to pick up the cask. And mind you, back in the early 80s, travel was not as easy through Scotland. There were not paved roads. It was a very bumpy ride. And he picked up this cask and put it in the back of his car and drove it all the way back home. Was pulled over in the process by the police. Could barely get the car moving. It was weighed down so much. And they essentially brought the cask strength to his friends. They put it on a little luggage rack, popped the bung, and poured the whiskey straight from it. Obviously, as that happened, more and more friends became aware of what was happening. And sooner than later, the cask was gone before they knew it. And they asked to do it again. So eventually, that was born into what we are now. It did start as a group of friends, a society that got together, regardless of their backgrounds, regardless of their skin colors or how much money they had. And they all just sat down and enjoyed this whiskey together. It gave them all an even ground to just enjoy the whiskey unadulterated, with nothing being touched between that cask and it being in their glass. And we have continued that to this day. As we talk about the whiskey and the labelings and how we work, it will tie in as you notice. Well, you guys don't have them, but if you see bottles, we do not put distillery names on our bottles. As you can see from our tasting order, they all go by distillery numbers. Back then, obviously, because nobody was doing it at the time, it started that we were not allowed to put these names on our bottles because it would have stolen some thunder from these distilleries. A lot of legal jargon that we have no reason to know of kind of went on behind the scenes, and they had found a way to bring this whiskey forth without putting names on the distilleries. Back then, we did not have computers and technology to keep track of all of these things, but we did have a list of where we got the whiskey from in distilleries. And we kind of brought that on moving forwards. On top of legal reasons, it also came forth that nobody knew what they were drinking. People were not judging a whiskey before they drank it. They were not looking at marketing tools. They were not, oh, well, this one, I know this one's going to be good, and, predetermining in their mind that whiskey is going to taste good. Believe it or not, that does happen. You can look at something and just because it's supposed to be good, you're going to think that it's good. And you're not really going to judge it for what it is. So from that, our numbering system was born. We do not share the numbers. We are not afraid to talk about the numbers, however, in person or on video. We do not do it on YouTube, and you will not see it in an email, but go to Google. There are plenty of documents and people out there that are happy to fill in those numbers for you, and all of them are accurate. You can see it. I do recommend not seeing them before we do the tasting. However, I'm happy to talk about them after we try each one. Believe it or not, some of you, I'm not sure of how nerdy we are here. Some of you probably have not tasted most of these ever before. A lot of what we do and the beauty of it is everything is single cask. So we can buy casks from distilleries that do not bottle their whiskey themselves. They go into blends or they're just used for small production locally or whatever it may be. And we can then release them as that distillate instead of as a blend like Ballantine's or Black and White or Johnny Walker and the sorts. So you may not know of some of these distilleries. That's perfectly normal, but it's what makes it so exciting is you are learning and trying things that you cannot go to a store and just buy. There are a lot of independent bottlers coming out nowadays. It's more accessible to people. So you're starting to see a lot more of them. But there are those, bigger distilleries that a lot of people know of because it's a lot easier to sell and consumers know those names. So that is a bit fun. We have now bottled from over 149 whiskey distilleries around the world, from Scotland to Japan, down to Taiwan, and over to Texas, Washington State, you name it, we have bottled it from a lot of places. On top of that, we've also done spirits, single cask spirits. We've done single grain whiskeys, rums, armagnacs, cognacs, barrel-aged gins, bourbons, ryes, American single malts. We've done so much. Though we are a Scotch society, I would say about 95% of what we do is still single malt Scotch. We do all love trying new things. So we have ventured out a little bit, but those do not get released often. I don't want to get anybody excited if they're big bourbon people or anything like that. We do release maybe 5 a year, but I wouldn't, it's not the sole purpose of the society. So with that, I hope everybody is enjoying their whiskey because I have not touched mine. But to kind of bring forth our bottles, I'm not sure if anybody has seen, has ever looked at, or knows what we're looking at. But this is our bottle and our label. It is a green bottle. You'll see a few colors scattered throughout, lots of words, lots of numbers, and a lot of fun words that you've probably never seen on a whiskey label before. So to start, I don't know if Vadim was trying to do this or not. As a society, we have come up with 12 flavor profiles. We are not available in stores, nowhere. You cannot buy bottles from the bar. You can't buy bottles from a liquor store. They're just not available anywhere. Here in the US, we do have a 3-tier liquor system. There's many different licenses that are required to go to each one. And we are a society. We do have an authorized shipper who will ship the whiskey to your door, but you cannot pick it up at tastings. We do have one bar here in Southern California, up in Glendale, Tam O'Shanter, that does have some older whiskeys of ours. They are not up to date. They are not new releases that are coming out soon. But if it's something you would like to try, it is available at the bar to go and get. You do not have to be a member to order it. It is just available on their menu. However, as Dave mentioned, we have not really had a big presence in Southern California. I have actually just relocated to the Los Angeles area. So moving forward, next year is when we're going to be starting our official in-person tastings again, trying hopefully January. It has been pushed back a couple times, but we are now at officially January. But I am also available for private tastings, things of the sorts, and you do not have to be members for that. There's a pricing system that we work where essentially membership is included in the tasting itself. So do not be afraid to ask. I'm actually a member of the society before I joined. I just got lucky and messaged the right person at the right time and was able to start working with the company. But I also am a consumer as well. So you guys ever have tastings or anything, I'm also a person. I'm not just a Scotch Malt Whiskey Society ambassador. So prefacing that with, We are very honest people here. We do not need to push sales. Again, these are available to members only. So members buy everything to begin with. So everything I talk about is, one, genuine, because I've not tasted these whiskeys yet. And two, I will not bullshit you to your face. And none of us will. So one thing is, we don't make bad whiskey. We have so many people taste our whiskeys before they go to bottles. However, because we are so kind of general in how many different kinds of whiskeys we bottle, every whiskey will not be for everybody. So if you do not like one of the whiskeys, it is okay. It just might not be for your palate, might be too strong, too much alcohol, wrong flavors. We have everything from young whiskey here to peated whiskey, older whiskey, island whiskey. We have everything here. So do know that, we're not a brand that you have to like everything we do. We don't, work on just one part of the consumer base. With all of that, I will go back to the flavor profiles. We are only available online. You cannot taste these things before you buy them. So the flavor profiles were created to allow for people to see a generalized flavor category that they might be interested in before they buy it. You are probably able to see a lot of tasting notes from people online, but we also have a fun bit of tasting notes on the label and on the website. These tasting notes were put forth by a tasting panel. It is our panel. It is made up of master distillers, master blenders, whiskey writers, and such that all come together and volunteer their time to sit down and taste these whiskeys blind with very limited information, and they do not talk to each other. They write down their tasting notes, and at the end, they give it to the chair of the tasting panel. They decide to put all these tasting notes together, figure out what works, and then they slap them onto the bottle. Again, these tasting notes are a culmination of multiple people. You will not taste everything in these tasting notes. You are not meant to taste everything in these tasting notes. You are not 12 people in one. We all have different palates. We all find different flavors. We all have different flavor receptors in our nose. That's just how it works. So do not be afraid if you see 7 different things and you only taste 2. It's okay. So with that, our flavor profiles range from, it's called young and sprightly, all the way up to heavily peated. And there's 10 in between. And they break it down into categories. A lot of times cask influence plays a big deal. One is juicy oak and vanilla. 99% of those are just going to be bourbon barrel aged whiskeys. Deep, rich, and dried fruits. You're probably looking at some sort of sherry cask, if not maybe like a red wine cask. 3 different levels of peat. And then we have some other fun ones like Olned Dignified, which would make sense if you've drank wine before that's aged. We have like sweet, fruity, and mellow, which is just kind of nice and fruity. There's a lot more of like, long fermentation times where you're getting some fruitier esters out of it. And then we also have something like spicy and sweet, which is probably the most generalized profile of them all. But other than that, I see Dave has a question. What can I do for you, Dave?
Thank you.
I like the raise hand feature. It's kind of neat.
Usually I just blurt it out. This is unusual for me. So you have a tasting panel. That sounds really cool.
Mm-hmm.
But how is there a process that you have all these casks and they're all single barrel?
Yep.
Just is there ever who goes out and acquires those barrels? Mm-hmm. And I imagine that they're aging, and if they've aged, then you pop the bong and you get into it and you're just like, hey, this thing needs more time.
Yeah.
Or it needs, basically the only thing that I understand that you could do is give it more time, because you're not going to blend it, because you don't do that. You may just say this barrel's not going out.
Yeah. So we have 2 guys. We have Kai and Ewan. They are our warehouse people. They both do all of the tasting. Ewan was actually a bartender at one of our members clubs in Scotland. And they realized very quickly how good of a palate and nose he had. So he was brought on to work under Kai, and they travel the world tasting barrels from different distilleries. They also run the entire warehouse. Every single barrel of whiskey is tasted by them, be it monthly, weekly, depends on where in the aging process it is. Because we have such a large stash, we are able to have whiskey as young as almost new make, all the way up to, we don't typically bottle over 30 or 32 years. I think I've seen like one 35-year-old in the 2.5 years I've been here. So there is so much whiskey in between that, depending on the process, the aging process, the maturation process, they kind of go from there. There are 2 things that we do to figure that out. One, we also re-rack casks. So in technicality, it is still a single barrel of whiskey. However, it has been transferred over to new cask. You may see that on 2 of the whiskeys that we tried tonight. I won't get too much information, but if you take a look down here, you'll see initial cask and then you'll see final cask. So we will then give you all the information on the 2 casks that it was aged in. And then on the website, you will be able to see how long it was aged in the first barrel, how long it was aged in the second barrel. This does not mean it was bad whiskey. It just meant that Kai or Ewan thought it would do much better put into a second cask.
So essentially, you have some control.
Yeah, we have all the control. We have full control over everything in our warehouse. It is from beginning to end. We're in a process of being able to buy new make spirit, build our own barrels, and then age the whiskey from new make to bottle. Of course, that's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years down the road. But because we have so much inventory, we have the flexibility to do that, unlike a lot of other independent bottlers who, just don't have that. So they are able to do that. Also, because they have full view over the entire process, if something is just not good, we're not going to try and fix it. We're not going to just toss it into a finish of a cask. All of our maturation is typically 1 to 5 years. It is not just like a 3 or 6 month thing trying to mask flavors. We're not tossing in some wine in the fridge to blurt out some bad stuff. If it's just not good, we will sell it off. We don't keep it. We don't bottle it. It's just not what we do. Because we are so specialized in a category, we have members that are paying members. We're not going to sell them bad whiskey just to hit numbers. Thankfully, we do not have to do that because we have so much inventory. So that will happen. And on top of that, we actually have had in-house blends done before. Ewan likes to blend. So since he's been here, I think we've done 10 different in-house blends. And they are all bottled at 50%. They're the only things that we will proof down. There's one exception. We had a rye recently released that I think came out at like 72%, and the distillery asked to proof it down before they gave it to us. So that was proofed down to an acceptable 67 or 68% ABV. But otherwise, those blends are the only things we will proof, and they are always to 50%. We've not had one released in a couple months, and I think our next one will probably be released later this year. But that is it. We don't do anything else. If the cask just doesn't cut it, we will get rid of it. Obviously, we can let it sit and age, but if something is just off, Kai and Ewan just don't want to deal with it. With that said, we did also start on choosing casks that are not from like matching the distillery's character. So if you love Lafroigs, our Lafroigs are not meant to taste like a typical Lafroig. It'll have some of the characteristic because it is a Lafroig, but at the same time, we don't buy stuff that is just typical to a brand because you can go buy that anywhere. There's nothing special about it in the sense of being a single barrel, cask strength whiskey from us. So you will taste some stuff from distilleries that you may think you know what it is that may not taste like it. Others will taste exactly like they're supposed to taste. One of the ones we do tonight, I had the pleasure of naming and doing the tasting notes with my teammates last year. And the second I put my nose in it, I knew exactly what it was. But not all of them are like that. And it's not because I have a superhuman nose. It's a very distillery driven whiskey. So thankfully we have hands-on process from finishing maturation to bottling. We do get our casks from some middlemen sometimes. So one thing I can say is we do not always have full visibility on where the casks were aged. So sometimes, we can't tell you, hey, this was aged on Isla for 15 years and then sent to our warehouse in Glasgow and then bottled. Sometimes it just ages in our warehouse in Glasgow, which if you ask some bigger nerds in the whiskey scene, that does change the aging process and the maturation process because obviously weather and all of that do have a play. So that is something that also changes how we bottle things. They are aged in many different places. Some are aged in, original warehouses for a longer period of time before moving over to us. Some are aged in our warehouse in Glasgow for almost the entire maturation period. So it does change things as well. But hopefully I answered all your questions and I didn't just blabber on. Good. Awesome. I see 2 other questions here as well. I see Brian.
I just want to do one quick housekeeping thing, just so you're in the loop. As you notice, we are recording this presentation and it will end up on YouTube for people to watch after.
Yes.
So you mentioned that there's certain things you guys don't release to the public. If at any point throughout tonight you want to share some secrets with us that you don't want ending up on YouTube, let me know. I'll hit pause. We can talk candidly and then resume. We've been known to do that in the past, but for the most part, we record it for our members that bought into the tasting and weren't able to make it tonight for whatever reason, so they can rewatch. And but just so you're in the loop, I didn't want you to like drop some golden nuggets and then it ends up on YouTube and you get in trouble, you know?
We don't have any crazy secrets. If you guys would like, with that, because we don't talk about them openly on YouTube, I'm happy to chat about all of the whiskeys at the end of the tasting. We can taste through them during the tasting. We can talk about them. And then at the end, we can kind of take some time and just talk about the distilleries themselves and, the whiskeys and whatnot. So it's nothing too crazy. We can talk about them during it though. So not a problem. I appreciate it.
Perfect. Yeah. And then the birthday boy had his hand raised very patiently.
Yeah, don't expect that again. So how do these sell? Do you drop them on a specific day and time and it's a mad rush like, everything else these days?
So it's been an evolution. It is a great question. I don't know if anybody here is a member. And if you are, I don't know how long you've been with us. Elissa, how long have you been a member? A long time?
2 years.
2 years. So you've been here. So back when I first joined, I think we had close to 2,300 members or 2,500 members, something of the sorts, which is a respectable size whiskey club just here in the US. Since then, we are now we just officially passed it, I think last month or the month before, 5,000 members. So we have doubled in size in the last 2 years, and we've been in the US since 1985. So we have had a large influx of members. Now, obviously, as everybody else, COVID played a big part in that. We are an online only service. We ship whiskey. Well, we arrange for shipping of whiskey to your door. That was huge. Members loved that. And all everybody wanted to do last year was drink because they thought they were going to die. So they drank a lot. And with that, we did have a large influx of traffic on our website. So last year during Fagil, we have festival bottles that we released during that time that go along with the different festivals happening in Scotland. We at one point did have our website break on the back end on the payment system because there was such a large rush. However, since then, we have had to change up how we do some releases just so it didn't become a mad rush. We do have a lot of older members. At one point, I think our average member age is like 55 to 60 years old. It's just a thing that has always been
55 to 60 isn't old, but go ahead.
Average age. Now remember, we have 3,000 members. As of today, it is probably 10 to 20 years younger than that.
I mean, 55 as of today, but go ahead.
I am in that average age.
So with that, though, we do also have a lot of members from 70 to 90 plus, and they are not as technologically savvy as a lot of the younger people are, which is just not fair. They've been members for 20, 30, 40 years. For them to all of a sudden have what they've been growing with since day one taken away from them because they can't sit on their phones and their laptops and click faster than somebody else isn't fair. But it's also not fair for us to hurt or take away from those people that do have that access. So we have had to implement lotteries on some of our harder to get bottles, not because we want to pick and choose. It is it is fully random. We do not choose names by hand. It is just one of those things that we had to do it. So it was more of a fair game to everybody. We have put bottle limits on a lot of our bottles. It is only one per member, and we do physically go through every order to make sure people didn't try and beat around the bush or create separate accounts. So we do that. But other than that, we've also had to improve our numbers of volume of whiskeys coming over, because at one point last year, we had 2 entire bottles available on our website, 2. For 4,000 members at the time to choose between 2 bottles, that's not fun. At this time, I think we have almost 50 different SKUs available on our website. That is how much we had to increase our volume, just so it wasn't just a mess of a release. So with all of that said, we do have set release times all the time. We have 2 releases each month, the first and the third Tuesday of every single month, pending any holidays that pop in. And they are released at 1 p.m. Eastern time. So it is always 10 a.m. Pacific time that they are released on those exact same 2 days. The 2 Mondays before those, we do a YouTube video at night, and we talk about like 5 or 6 of the whiskeys being released. And then we paste an entire list of what is coming out the next day. That is something that is new. We did not used to do that. It did used to be, hey, here's a release at 1 o'clock. Now swipe through the website and see what we have available. That is not helpful anymore. So we have now started releasing that, and we post that on YouTube. So people have 12, 15 hours to kind of go through those and see what they like. Prices, cask types, cask numbers, age, names, all of that is posted. So we have had to kind of find a way to make it where it's not a Black Friday mad rush on Thanksgiving for buying bottles. It is a little bit more tame now. So they are always released, members only. You do have to be logged on. You can do it online. You can call us, but there are not a lot of us to answer the phone. So if you go to voicemail, you just got to keep calling. So we do recommend doing it online, but it is much more tame than it has been in the past.
Now, those outturn videos really are pretty cool. I mean, I have to tell you, though, I mean, I've listened a few times and it does influence what I buy.
Yeah.
So I have a few other questions. So
Yeah, absolutely.
if it doesn't sell out immediately, do you allow a second bottle per member? It's always one per member.
No, not every bottle is limited to one per member.
Okay.
Only very specific bottles are.
Do you ship from the US or from the UK so that it's, you know?
Yeah. All of our product is in a warehouse in New York. So the shipment is arranged from the state of New York. With that, you are charged a New York state tax. As I mentioned, we are, and it helps out here because taxes are pretty dang high out here. Helps if you're in Washington state. We are a members club. We have authorized shippers and authorized retailers that do the sale of the bottle in the state of New York and then is shipped to your door. So you will have a New York state tax. That is just how it works. We do not have any other information on those two things because it is not our business. It is other businesses. But that is how that works. We do also have shipping prices that are a little on the higher end, but it is because of how many, you know, there's a lot of overhead that has to be had. We always recommend, we offer to hold bottles for up to 30 days so you can combine multiple orders from usually 60 bottles that are released in that month period, because it does become substantially cheaper when you go from 1 to 2 bottles and then all the way up to 12 before a new case is created. So that is something we do always recommend. So that's just, we do what we can. We are currently in the process of working on getting better shipping rates. But that is all we have for the moment. So.
And you also do club members only tastings locally?
Yes. Yeah. So before COVID started and you know, we have not gotten back to it yet. Monthly tastings for the outturns. So these outturns that we have on YouTube, we typically do them in person in major cities in the US. With me being here now, there will be monthly tastings in Los Angeles. When possible, I will be extending that to having one in San Diego, Los Angeles, and then San Francisco. We'll get it either every month or every other month. And then hoping to include Orange County as well for those folks that are, you know, in the in-between. So that is something that, because I am here, we do have the freedom of having when they start again. But otherwise, they are only in major cities. You'll find them sometimes in Portland, Seattle, then you'll have Chicago, and then mostly East Coast, Miami, Orlando, New Orleans, Atlanta, New York City, Boston, Philly, things like that. Thankfully, you guys are all here, so you have access to myself. But
not everyone here is here, by the way. Some people are from parts of, but
well, if anybody is from anywhere else in the US, if you have a specific question on if there's tastings in your area, please let me know. I'd be happy to help.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I see you have Seattle ones. Yes, you have Brian McCoy up in Seattle. So Brian will be able to do those monthly. He is not an employee. He is just a very long time member that does do them for us. So they are held monthly because he is stationed in Seattle. Awesome. Everybody else good on questions for now? Cool. Well, then with that, I can kind of go back to the society label as a whole and what we're looking at. So we've all been sipping this whiskey now for about half an hour while I talked everybody's ears off. And this is the first whiskey that we have started with. This is in our sweet, fruity, and mellow profile that is shown by this pinkish purple band. There are 2 others in this color range. Each color range has 3 flavors, and there's 4 color ranges. There's all the information's online too. I'll try and post a link to where you can read about them. But this is our sweet, fruity, and mellow profile. This is cask 63.74. And starting there, before I go off on a tangent, 63 is going to refer to the distillery number. That is the only information that pertains to anything that needs to be known about these numbers. So feel free at the end of the tasting to look it up. Obviously, if you want to now, you can. But in the meantime, this is from distillery 63. The second set of numbers, the 74 in this case, just talks about how many casks we have bottled from distillery 63 in our history. So this is the 74th barrel that we have bottled from that distillery. It is not a library. We do not have, they're not sister casks. They weren't bottled at the same time. It's just in numerical order as to when they were bottled at the society in the UK. These will be released out of order sometimes, and we do not get every single number. So if you ever have questions on those, or you've seen a cask that you've had in the past or one online that you want, feel free to ask us. We will be able to let you know if it's available or not in the US and where you can find it. But next to that, you're going to see the outturn. This is going to tell you how many bottles came out of the barrel that are available to the entire world. This is not just bottles in the US. That is 204 bottles of this were made for the entire world. We, in the US, were actually allocated 96 of them. So those allocations range anywhere from 30 bottles to typically about 120 is the max. Unless it's an exclusive, then we'll have the entire cask. So this one we actually got a lot of. And then below that is where the fun begins with our society, is you'll see the name of the whiskey. So this one is called Straightforward Shooting Weekend. These names are more or less just a fun play on words that the tasting panel came up with based on the tasting notes. So typically, a lot of times in the tasting notes, you'll read this whole bit of tasting notes, and then at the bottom, it'll be like, this really reminded me of a shooting weekend I went on with my wife that was very straightforward. So boom, that's where they put the name on it. So it is not, anything specific. It is just a fun play on words that was created by the flavor or the tasting panel. And then below that is a small tidbit of the tasting notes themselves. These are not exacts. These are things that are trying to be written down to be more approachable to more people. It is not going to say this tastes like vanilla, peaches, and oranges. This smells like this. They try to make a story or a poem out of it, just so it's more approachable to more people. So this one reads, a total fruit bomb of a dram, apples and pears everywhere, plus tropical fruits in syrupy form, waxes, peppery wood spice, and total pleasure. Now, when you go to the website, it's going to break that down. So our full tasting notes, I'm not going to do this for all of them, but just so you have an idea of how they work. On the website itself, it says, a wonderful aroma greeted the panel. Poached pears, Battenberg cake, buttered scones, stewed rhubarb, custard, strawberry jam, frangipani, rum-soaked raisins, clotted cream, and bramble juices spilled on a dunnage floor. Now, just an FYI, these are Scottish people naming these. So please do use Google if you don't know what some of these things mean, because I don't know what a lot of them mean. So you will see that this is British English, not American English. Luscious, we thought. With water, there were caramelized peaches, flower honey, lychees, and ripe pears, poached in calvados. Some rhododendron, I don't know what those are. They're flowers, though, in the background. The palate exploded with figs and Armagnac, cloudy apple juice, vanilla cream, pear cordial, apple turnover, and some chalky green woodiness. With water, it became almost hyper juicy. Mango, marzipan, more pears, more apples, strawberry cream, camphor, fruity waxes, grape juice, tinned peach syrup, and exotic fruit cordials. Magnifique. So as you can see, there were 30 different things listed in this tasting note. Obviously, one human did not come up with that. Essentially, what it's doing is it's trying to make it more readable and more kind of just connectable to the person drinking it. So if you see one or two tasting notes in there that you're used to liking, you'll notice at the end of the day that there is a lot of these that have very specific notes in them that if you notice you like a few bottles, you'll see those tasting notes in all three of those. So there's some that will be much more creative and a lot less specific on flavors. Some of them are usually in the older bottles, but there are more, again, storytelling than they are specifics. And those full tasting notes are only available online. There's not enough space on these labels to hold them. Below that on the label, you'll see the age. The age is now being put in the same color as the flavor profile. So this is an 18-year-old whiskey. And then this beside that is some important information. The date it was distilled on, the region, and the cask type. So this was distilled in May of 2002 from a Speyside distillery, and it was fully aged in a first fill ex bourbon barrel. Obviously, I'm assuming everybody here knows their barrel types and first fill, second fill, and all of that. Below that, it's not obviously too important, but this says single malt Scotch whiskey. That will change if you do look at the grain whiskeys or the bourbons or anything else. And then the last bit of information is going to be the ABV. That is going to be on the bottom right corner of the label. And this comes in at 55.2%. So that is our entire bottle and label. Does anybody have any questions on that or questions into more info? No? It's pretty self-explanatory. Like I said, the distillery list you can find online. At the end of the video, we can kind of talk about them in specific if you'd like. But otherwise, that's all of the information you need is on the label. As I said, that final cask, if there was multiple casks, will be listed below the cask on the bottom right here where that empty space is. And then again, if it's a different type of whiskey or spirit in general, that will be listed right there. But otherwise, those are our labels and how you read them. It's not as complicated as a French or German wine label, but it is still a little bit different than your typical store-bought whiskey. Otherwise, if you do buy stuff, some people like this, some people think it's fun. This says bottle 1 of 204. This is not the first bottle. They all say bottle 1. So no, you're not special if you buy one, and don't get your hopes up. It is not worth any more money. This is just a bottle of one of the 204 bottles, and every bottle does say that. So that's the first whiskey. Does anybody have any feedback on it? Do they like it? Do they not like it? Again, you don't have to like them all. You're not going to hurt my feelings, I promise. It's just one that was chosen to kind of kickstart the night. 5 others, I think that was the second lowest ABV of the night. The lowest being the next whiskey and also the oldest whiskey. Other than that, it was a nice start to everything else that will be much higher than that. I'm sure I noticed some people are already moving on to others, but I'm not really sure how you guys want to go about it. Did you want to talk about each whiskey, or are you more just tasting them? Or, Vadim, I don't know if you have any insight. How do you guys normally do the tasting of the whiskeys?
We really play it by ear, whatever you're comfortable with.
Okay.
People are tasting. It seems like as long as everybody's having a good time and asking questions, and that's what we're here for. If you want to talk about each whiskey and then talk through each one, we can. We can just drink, whatever you want to do.
Did you want to pause the video just after each whiskey and then we can talk about it, the distillery and all of that, or would you rather do that like at the end, or is there preference?
Whatever you want to do.
Okay.
Show of hands. You guys want to pause and talk now?
I would like to get into the other expressions because I'm on number 3 and yum, tasty.
I mean,
let's start jumping in, then we can go off.
I finished the first 2 already, and I'm going to say, Zachary, second one, oh my God, treasure it. I don't know if you all can ever, okay, can I tell them what it is? Because
Nope.
Statement.
Not yet. That's why I was asking is, if we wanted to stop and talk about each one, we can, or at the end, we can just revisit all of the whiskeys and then talk about them one at a time. There's no problem with that at all.
If you guys look it up, you'll be able to find out what those numbers mean. I'm going to tell you, treasure that second one, because I don't know if you'll ever be able to get from that second one an age statement like that. And Matt, you can probably prove me wrong. I've not been able to, but my husband just said, nope, you're not buying that one. Nope. So treasure that one. But David, I'm ready for number 3.
There's a few bottles left of that second one, Lisa.
I will say on that note, I built this list by myself, specifically for this tasting. This was not predetermined. I picked it based on some conversations with Vadim. So these were never bundled together. There was nothing like that. However, this was also built about a month ago. So since then, most of them have sold out. The first one that we just tasted is sold out. However, the second one And I think the fourth one, the second and the fourth are both still in stock. Again, you do have to be members to purchase them, but just a heads up, they were all plenty in stock when I built the list, and then they sold out. So just keep that in mind. Typically these bottles, depending on what they are, since we've revamped our system of releasing whiskeys, we have not had a lot of whiskey sell out instantaneously. Last year, bottles were selling out within 2 minutes, and there's no exaggeration. We would have releases of 15 bottles and 6 of them would be gone before you could count to 10. And it was a mess. Since I think just in the last 6 months alone, we've had like 2 whiskeys sell out in less than 15 minutes. And it's because we had a ridiculous amount of them, like 300 bottles of them. And they still sold out that fast.
Yeah,
But,
I will tell you that I did sit waiting to press a button on the sunshiny one because I wanted it that bad.
we have had, I can see numbers of visitors on our site. We have had at times up to 800 people waiting at like 12:55 for releases to sit and buy one. So it does happen. But it does not deplete that fast. You're not going to come, if you join, you're not going to come to a membership where you're fighting for these bottles. Like I said, in the last 6 months, maybe 2 of them have sold out that fast. Otherwise, they will sit around. The lower end of it you'll see is a couple days. If it's like a really sought after bottle that's limited to one that, you know, might be a little higher on the price side, you'll see most of them last a few weeks. Then we will have a couple probably on the younger side or of distilleries that we see more whiskey from. Those will sometimes sit around for a month or two, but otherwise it is usually open book. You're not going to see something you like and have it be gone, you know, an hour later, typically. So just as an FYI, you know, before you guys go into it, if you do look and decide to be a member. But
I'm with John. I'm with David. I think we should roll it and go back and talk later.
okay.
Works for me. Let's taste through all of them and then we can just hang out at the end. We usually at a tasting, we'll do the official part and then finish out the Zoom and finish out the recording part and just hang out. So we can do that at the end.
Yeah.
That works for me.
By all means, yeah. I mean, I'm pretty much done. We're not a very complicated society. I can open the floor to questions on anything related to the society or the whiskey itself. I'm always happy to answer those. I mean, Brian, Vadim, Dave, they've already asked a big part of most questions that people ask. But other than that, you know, if anybody has any questions themselves about the society, about the whiskey, the casks, whatever it is, please do ask. I'm happy to talk about those. But otherwise, you know, feel free. We can just hang out and drink and chit chat or, you know, shoot the shit. We're a pretty laid back group of people. We're a small team. We're all whiskey nerds. We're all consumers before anything. Ben and Jenna, my only 2 counterparts, are pretty big in social media. I'm the only one that's not. So you guys may know them already. You may have seen them on Instagram. Jenna actually used to be out here, Whiskey a Go Girl. I don't know if anybody knows Jenna or has drank with Jenna before. She used to be located out here. She has actually moved to the East Coast and booted my ass out this way. So she is out there now. She's still part of our team. Otherwise, yeah, we're pretty fun group of people. I like to say so.
Zachary, Anna has a question.
Yeah, Anna, what can I do for you?
Thanks, David. So I was wondering, as we're sipping on number 2, which I did go and peek at the age statement, and I was just wondering about that. Do you buy it that it's already older and then you age it for a few more years? I know you said that could kind of vary. And how do you decide how long you want to age it? Like, I'm curious on the kind of the decisions about that.
Yeah. So there, as you said, that can vary very highly. I will say right now in the state of the whiskey world, if we were to buy whiskey that old and sell it to you right away, you're essentially going to be writing us blank checks and letting us fill it out. Whiskey is so astronomically expensive nowadays that if you were to buy an aged whiskey of that age, you're probably going to be paying 3, 4, 5 times as much as you would have 2, 3 years ago. So typically we'll buy younger whiskeys and let them sit. Other times, and you'll see it on the prices on the website for different distilleries. If it's on the more expensive side, it was probably something we had to buy aged already. And then we aged for a few years in our warehouse up until when we thought it was good enough to be released. Again, our whiskey goes through so many different hands and mouths before it is released that there's so few room for errors or bad whiskey to make it through that it goes through some pretty hefty processes before it makes it to the bottle and on sale to you guys. So it does depend. A lot of times now we buy much younger whiskey to keep our prices down because we do, if we're paying $10,000 for a barrel of whiskey, you got to somehow cut those costs down into how much each bottle is going to cost. Remember that whiskey has to get from there to here, has to be bottled there, and then it has to be sent over to us. So there's a lot of fees. So we do try and buy younger and then age for a longer period. So those costs are cut. But then at times there are whiskeys that are available that, now again, remember I said our whiskeys are not meant to taste like the distillery wants them to, which is sometimes why the older expressions become available to us. Highland Park, say they were aging a whiskey and they got to it and they're like, this just doesn't taste like Highland Park. There's no way we can make this work. They'll let that barrel, up for sale because at some point, whiskey that old, there's a very few expressions that actually taste very good after 30, 40 years. It's just science. It's going to taste like oak. Doesn't matter how much you charge. It's you're risking a lot of money and product to sit for that period of time where 99% of the time, the person that put it in the barrel is dead before it's made it out of the barrel. That's just how that works. There's no reason for them to continue aging it, hoping that it tastes better. So like, hey, this is 20 years old. This doesn't taste like Highland Park. Maybe you guys want it. We'll taste it. We'll maybe let it sit. And then if it's good enough, we'll release it. Now there is no set, standard here. This is all variable as whiskey is in itself. It's all just science and maturation and weather and everything that goes into it. So it does change, but we typically nowadays buy younger whiskey or as young as new make, and we barrel it and then we just sit it in our warehouse in Glasgow. So was that good enough? Did I miss some? I usually miss some things. So, all right, awesome.
Zach,
Dave, you got another one?
Yes. Could you just, because you've kind of talked a little bit about number one. Have you talked about number two yet?
No, I have just moved on to number two.
So let's do this, if we can, please. And I'm going to make a request. If we can you can take us through the remaining expressions. Spend about maybe 5 minutes on each one because I know that a lot of us are anxious. I'm on number 3. OMG! Wow.
I'm the same way.
So let's kind of take through, and then I think we'll be able to get into a lot more questions, if that's okay with everybody. And afterwards,
listen, I'm just here to talk and answer you guys' questions, so I'm fine with it. So number 2. You will notice it does have a black label. Most of our whiskeys have white labels. Very few have black labels, and even fewer have black labels with a gold ribbon in a box. The black labels that we typically put on whiskeys is just because they're older. That's it. Vault's collections releases will come in a wooden box and have a little gold ribbon on them. Those are cream of the crop that our whiskey tasters, our panel and Kai and Ewan really thought stood out above the rest. They're casks that are just, almost once in a lifetime, that are, of course, they are going to be a little bit older, but they'll usually range like 23 years and up. So this one is just an older whiskey. This is cask 42.56, and this is a 26-year-old whiskey. At 26 years old, this is pushing 51.5% ABV. So there's still a little bit of life to it. It is not thinned out. It's not sitting down in the low 40s or anything, which is great. And this had a outturn. Now, this is a bourbon barrel. So this had an outturn of 180 bottles. So the Angels took a nice little share of it. But there was still a good amount left. This whiskey is called Sipping Whiskey from a Shell. This name is it relates a little bit more to how the whiskey is going to taste. This is telling you more of a story and an experience of drinking the whiskey than the other one was. So essentially they're probably wanting you to think this is what it would be like drinking whiskey from a shell. Tasting notes here are delicious sweetness, delicate smoke of a smoldering ash in an artist's studio, and coastal elements like sipping whiskey from an oyster shell. That is the storytelling that you'll see on some of the whiskeys. They're not telling you what to look for, what it tastes like. They're giving you an experience of what they felt like when they were drinking a whiskey. I don't know if a lot of people know this. Your memory ties to a lot of what you taste. Your taste buds do not tell you what you're tasting. You have receptors in your nose That is why if you hold your nose, the only things that you can really taste are sugar and spice, I believe. Everything else is all from those receptors in your nose. So essentially it's your nose and your palate working in unison with your brain. And a lot of times your brain is remembering very specific situations to where you probably smelled that, which is why if anybody has seen the documentaries on YouTube or on, I don't even know what they're on anymore, Netflix or those Somm documentaries about the master somms going through their training process for wine. People say, this smells like my grandma's closet, tastes like my grandma's closet. You don't know what that tastes like, but you have walked into your grandparents' house, been hit in the face with a smell or a stench, if you would, of something very specific. And it's the exact same thing for other stuff. You've gone to the beach and smelled that salty air and that wind hitting your face, maybe that sand between your toes. Like these are experiences that live in your brain, that when you drink some of these whiskeys, although you've never licked a rock or, you've never eaten, shit, you still know what it smells like. So when you smell something or you taste something, it is bringing you back to that memory. So that is what these tasting notes try to do, is connect a memory of something that they've been through that maybe you can sit and think about while you drink the whiskey, and you can kind of have an idea. So this is from September of 1994. This was distilled. It is from the Highlands. This is actually technically an island whiskey. It is the only distillery on the island itself. And this is in full maturation of a second fill ex-bourbon barrel. So it is second fill, meaning that there might be a little bit more of the distillate flavor in there. But this is a fun one. I did want to bring an older whiskey. This is in our old and dignified flavor profile, by the way, this darker red. That is the least explanative with flavor profile that we have. It tastes old and dignified. It's hard to explain it. It just has those, let's call them tertiary characteristics that you would typically get in like an aged wine or something. So that's the second one. This distillery puts out both peated and unpeated malt. If it is not in the peated sector, it is the unpeated distillery. Just keep that in mind. Moving on to the third one. Like I said, I don't drink quick, so let me go ahead and pour these really quickly.
Oh yeah, love this one.
This is from a distillery that a lot of people have probably had. And
Number 3 is really good. And all of you will normally know it as being always sherried.
Yes, this one is not though. So that is some of the excitement that you do get while drinking through some of our stuff, is you're used to certain things coming out of certain distilleries, and these are the complete opposites.
This is a non-sherried version of a distillery that you really well know.
Let me pull our number 4 as well really quick so I can keep up with you alcoholics. All right. So
Zach, is there a practical reason that all the bottles are green?
That honestly, I don't know. I think there was something back in the day, long time ago. I know green glass was much cheaper than clear glass coming through the war. However, when it comes to this period of time, I really don't know. I think there's an answer, but I'd have to reread Pip's book to tell you, to be honest. But I think there is an answer. I'm not a school guy, so the information doesn't really stay in my brain if it doesn't really mean a lot, if that makes sense. So this one, very popular distillery. This is cask 96.32. This is in our spicy and sweet profile. That is the purple label, as you'll see up there. And again, down here and over here. It is 212 bottles from a barrel. So this was a pretty hefty load. This is the youngest of the ones we've tasted, coming in at 10 years old. Just a heads up, this is starting to get up there in ABV. This comes in at 60.4%. Please do, again, I recommend tasting it neat, but if you have to add some water, do so after you taste it neat. Ben likes to say, taste the whiskey neat, add a couple drops of water, keep adding water and tasting in between until you have it to where you no longer think about the alcohol. The first thing, if you think about when you sip that whiskey, is the alcohol or ethanol. It's too hot, you need to add water. So feel free to do that. I'm sure you guys have had many tastings. Most master blenders proof their whiskey down to low 30s in ABV before blending, because that's when they get the most like core flavors of a whiskey. So don't be afraid to add water. These coming in at cask strength leave all of those esters in the whiskey itself. So when you add the water, they just float to the top of the glass. They are still in there. You can still smell them. They're just not going to burn as much. So that is always fun. This comes in, it's called Sunshiny Shimmer of Satisfaction, with the tasting notes reading pineapple, rhubarb, and orange, coconut, coffee, creamy vanilla, and chamomile tea, Belgian waffles, brown sugar, and barley sugars. This one is a bit more specific. But this one was distilled in May of 2010 in the Highland region in a full maturation first fill ex-bourbon barrel. So this one is fun. When we go over it later, most of you guys will have probably tasted the whiskey, but 99% of you have probably never tasted this whiskey before this outside of a sherry cask. So that is always exciting to me. So let me taste this one a little bit before I move on. I haven't even sipped it. Trying to keep up with chat too, but man, you guys are great. Ryan, there are unfortunately no more extras, but I do have whiskey here that if you ever want to meet up, I like to smoke cigars a lot.
Where do you live?
Happy to share.
Where do you live?
I live in between Los Angeles and Orange County, so I am available to everybody from Malibu down to San Diego.
So
Oh, good,
Zach, what you're
because
saying is
Santa
you're right by
Monica,
me.
we have a lot of fun in Santa Monica.
Where is in between? Like, what city is that?
Think Fullerton.
I have no idea where that is. Okay.
I'm 10 minutes from
wife does.
Disneyland.
Gosh.
There we go. I'm like
We were at Laguna today. Is near Laguna. Oh no, Long Beach. Near Long Beach.
Long Beach. You can take one road. You can take Beach Boulevard straight down, and you'll run into our town. So, yeah, here you go.
How am I boomer? Because I don't know where that. Okay, we're recording. Redeemed.
All right. So on to number 4. Number 4 is going to be the sherry bomb of the night. Number 4 is, again, a very popular distillery. This is our deep, rich, and dried fruits category. This is the darker orange band. So this was one that I had the pleasure of naming and tasting before it was bottled. We tasted these blind. The only thing we knew was ABV, and that was it. We didn't even know the cask type. So we tasted these blind. We all sat down, wrote some tasting notes, and then we all shared them at the end, and we built them together. Tom, who was on the YouTube tonight, I don't know if anybody saw him, doing another one of our exclusive releases for next year, or for tomorrow, sorry. This was an exclusive release for us here in the US. This is still available. We got all 577 bottles of this. Now, mind you, just so you are heads up of how this works. So we had this bottle, it released a couple, maybe 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, 577 bottles. There are only 189 left. So we've had 400 bottles sell in a 2-3 week period of the exact same bottle. So that is kind of how they go. They do move fast sometimes, but this, mind you, is also the most popular flavor profile next to the peated. So cask 30.108. And this was bottled for our global gathering, and 577 bottles. This one is called A Taste of Home. And the tasting notes come in at aromas of clove, ginger, and cinnamon, complemented by notes of custard, figgy pudding, and pancakes with syrup on a plentiful palate. This was distilled in 2008, February of 2008, in Speyside region in a full refill X sherry butt. So now this is a bigger cask, so the cask influence does not take as much in a shorter period of time, just from volume to cask ratio. But this does have a nice barrel influence. You can see it in the color. We do not add caramel coloring. We don't add E3 We don't add anything. It's just an all natural color. So there was a good amount of influence from the cask, which is fantastic. This whiskey itself from the distillery is typically known to be a little bit thinner on the palate. You don't get hit with as much. There's not as much viscosity, you can call it. But this does work very well. We actually had another bottle from this distillery just come out last week. It is 23 years old to this one's 12 years old. So it is a bit older. Same concept though. This one was 21 years in an ex-bourbon barrel and then 2 years in a first fill PX hogshead. So that one is much different with the sherry influence. But this one does come in at a whopping 64.3%. So think Christmas cake, think wintertime, chilly mornings, you're in a sweater. These are fantastic. This is
it's watered down.
This one has not been, but you might.
No, I was just kidding. So
it could be watered down. You might as well.
64.3. Okay.
I tasted it neat. A little bit too much alcohol. I have my handy dandy, pipette set up, and I got to tell you, just
my pipette.
a quarter of a pipette really made it.
No, these are, like I said to everybody, don't be afraid, add water. These do change. You'll notice in the tasting notes, the first one that I read the full ones of, they do sometimes do full breakdowns of what it tastes like neat and with water added. So you can see kind of the change in flavors. Some of us like it with water more so than others. This does come down to specific whiskeys. Some take better to water than others do. If you've watched our YouTube videos, you'll notice Ben and myself specifically talking a lot about that. Whiskeys do change. Like we prefer it with water sometimes, with other times. Sometimes we're split. He'll like it better with water. I'll like it better neat. So this is a completely personal experience. But this one kind of comes to the more sherried, familiar side to a lot of people. Again, I don't know anybody here yet, but most people prefer sherry casks. It's more approachable for more people. Those are the popular ones you see that are marketed the most. So these are very familiar flavors, just at a higher ABV. But we do still have 2 more bottles. I'm seeing Jason says all of the peat. We do have 1 peated coming, so don't worry. Man, you guys are great chatters.
And this bottle, there's no limit if you want to get this bottle, right?
No. So that's the thing is we've had people buy a case of stuff because they like it that much. Some bottles are not limited. Typically, these larger releases are not. We did have one recently of 29. It was another of the global gathering releases. That distillery does get limited when we release them for very specific reasons. And that one had like 300 bottles, but stuff like that will get it. This does not. You can go in, you can buy every last bottle. We had one guy come in and we had like a 27-year-old, no, it was a 29 or 30-year-old distillery 24, which is, everybody knows this distillery in the world. If you don't, you've never looked at a whiskey shelf in your life. And he bought all 47 of the remaining bottles, spent a lot of money, but he just came in, he bought them, and there's no limit. So some of them you're free to buy as much as you want.
What's I have to look it up.
Hey, Zach, I have a question. So the fact that you're on, barrel number 108 of this particular distillery, does that say A, that 108 of their barrels were really that darn good? Or is it B, that this distillery is more open with partnering with independent bottlers and then 108 of them were that darn good?
So you'll see it. The next 2 are actually 2 opposite sides of the spectrum. And that has changed over time. We've been around since 1983. Typically when we buy barrels, most of the time we'll buy them in groups. We won't just go buy one barrel. We'll buy like 6 or 12 of them, and we'll let them age more times, or some of them will just release in like groups over a few months, or some will just, age differently. Some distilleries used to be very open and a lot more approachable. Those same distilleries, some of them have the highest cask numbers in our entire society, 200, 300 casks. Now you'd be, hard fought to find 1 or 2 that we release in a 1 or 2 year period. So it really has just over time blossomed in very many different ways. Some are more open to it. Some have more available. Other times it's just, what's available. If you see them, there's 153, you'll notice we don't have any tonight. Distillery 53. I'm not afraid to say it's probably one of the worst bottlers of their own whiskey ever. They're terrible. You buy them on the shelf, you don't want anything to do with them. For some reason, all of them we get are like refill bourbon barrels. So we don't do much to them. However, when we get them, they're some of the best whiskeys we release. And it's not an exaggeration. Like we release a lot of them and they're spot on every time. But if you were to go buy them from the distillery, they're shit whiskey. I don't know why.
Them, or what are they doing?
I have no idea. They are very different. It is an island distillery. They're very different from the rest on the island. But I couldn't tell you. But it really does depend.
They're the backbone of a major blend.
Yeah,
yes,
they're just mass producing stuff for like the bottom dollar.
You all in Signatory release their best stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable. It just doesn't make any sense. But like they release a ton of them to us and we get fantastic quality, but to themselves, they have more access than we do and they just don't put out good whiskey. So it really just depends. Some just don't release a lot of whiskey. So like low volume distilleries just in general. So we don't get a lot of casks. Most of the time though, when you see them in the 100s, 200s and 300s, it's just because we've been bottling them for 40 years now. It's just, it's bound to have more releases than the newer ones. But there's some newer ones that are on 1, 2, and 3, but it's because they've only been releasing whiskey for 5 years now. So those, like I said earlier, they don't really matter anymore. Before they used to, and if you want to resell bottles and you have like the first, second, or third of some of these distilleries, it might make a difference in 10 years on the resale market, but otherwise, most stuff we release, everybody just drinks it. There's few exclusions, so just keep that in mind. This is not financial advice. There are very few distilleries that you will see very frequently online on auction websites, but they are also extremely hard to come by. So it's not something we get a lot of members doing, is just joining the flip, because our whiskey is enjoyed by our members 98% of the time, let's say. So yeah, the cask count doesn't really come into play anymore because of how long we've been around. So I don't know if that was substantial enough for you. Was there more you're looking for? Pat, no?
No, that was actually perfect. And the fact that you mentioned that there's, some distillers that aren't so good with their original bottlings, but sell some great stuff to independent bottlers, just kind of screams Isla to me. But this number 4, I have to say, is quite phenomenal. So looking forward to number 5 and number 6. Although, most of us aren't grain folks, so you might have to walk through.
Oh yeah. So the next one is the one different one. It was between, I actually talked with Vadim about it. It was between this and an American single malt. And I ended up going with this one because I'm a personal fan of them. This is not my favorite expression that we've ever had that was grain, but my favorites are also ones that have come out long ago that I've had to buy at auction myself. So single grain whiskey. Hold on, let me pour these before I chat. Small intermission.
We're on number 5, right? G9.4.
Yep.
So as we raise number 5 or a dram of something, I want to take just a quick second. Jason, have no fear. Your crushed bottle will be replaced. But I do want to say thank you to Zach and the Scotch Malt Whisky Society for joining us here today. We are excited. We are grateful to you making the time and putting together this fantastic lineup for us. So if everybody can jump on camera for our usual customary thank you. Don't roll your eyes, Kevin. We see you. So yeah, Zach, cheers to you. Thank you very much for being here.
All right.
Thank you all, ladies and gentlemen. I really appreciate you guys having me. And thank you for giving me the first normalized tasting I've had in a long time. It does mean a lot. It's fun on YouTube, but having, what are we at, 20 people, 23 different people. I'm a consumer first and foremost. I love this. I'm a people person. This is what I love to do. So having you guys all here, I've not talked to you all individually yet. I hate talking at people, but I'm trying to do my best here to answer questions for you guys and give you guys information. So I'm happy to hang around whenever we're done and just chit chat with everybody. So do you guys, thank you so much for having me. And I really appreciate you guys.
Glad that you're here.
Awesome.
This is only, I think, our second or third virtual tasting that we've done. So we're kind of new at it too.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just
110 under our belts this year. Something like that. Everyone hold up your glass and smile to the camera so I can get the screenshot. Everyone cheers. Perfect.
Got it, Vadim. And actually, it triggered a memory, Zach, when I picked up this glass. I don't know if you could read what's on it, but I was on the tasting with you for Wolfo back in July.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I just also reminded me, I never finished my sign up from back then. I got distracted. So this is a good reminder. I have an email from you that I need to reply to.
Yeah, absolutely. But on that note, just so you guys know, I said we're a small team. I also run the members program here in the US. So all phone calls, emails, chats are me. So feel free to email us. I get them all. I respond to them all. It is from me. It's not a bot. I do send all the emails. You might also get Jen on chat or the phones. We're a tag team. But yeah, So feel free to reach out. We're always happy to chat. We are the ones answering everything. So
I can confirm it's definitely from Zach.
So yeah, so on to number 5. This is a very different whiskey. Single grain whiskey is not as straightforward as you would expect as you think is single malt. Single grain whiskey does not mean it is made from one single grain. It essentially means it is made from one single distillery, and it is made out of something that is not 100% malted barley. It can be, but it also will then have been put through a continuous still instead of a pot still. So with that,
Can it actually have malted barley and still be called single grain?
It can. Actually, almost every spirit in the world has malted barley. It essentially starts the enzyme process when it's fermenting. So when they're using it, a lot of times bourbon and whatnot will use like 1 to 3% malted barley, strictly because it does help with that process, getting it going before it goes in the kiln. So
every whiskey, typically.
Yes, whiskey.
There's actually a couple of brands that that I know of that released a single malt. It's 100% malted barley, but it was made in a column still, so they had to call it a single grain.
Yes. And that's what I'm saying is single grain whiskey, there is so much to it. It can be made in so many ways, but it's a hell of a lot cheaper than single malt whiskey because of the continuous still. However, it also opens up a plethora of flavors that can be made outside of a pot still that cannot be made in a pot still, that can also be made using other grains, be it corn, wheat, unmalted barley, rye, whatever you want to call it. So with that, this is cask G9.4. And you'll notice that with all of our whiskeys or spirits it is not just a numbering system. These grains will have a G, bourbons will have a B, ryes will actually have an RW, and rums will have an R. So this is G9.4. G9 is just the 9th grain distillery we've bottled from, and this is only the 4th cask we've gotten from them. This did come from a barrel. This is one of the 2 though with a final cask. So there's 216 bottles here. And this is in our juicy oak and vanilla profile. So that is the closest thing you'll usually find if you're coming over from the bourbon world, just the most vanillins, caramels, very, knowable flavors that you're used to if you drink bourbon. Just the sweetness is not there because there's not a lot of corn. So tasting notes, this goes a lush pain, I don't know what that is, to beach holidays, silly fruit hats, drinks with umbrellas, and all the coconuts you can carry. This is a 20-year-old whiskey. Now, again, mind you, like I said, price is a big deal here. You're getting a 20-year-old whiskey for $165. Just in comparison, number 2 is a 26-year-old single malt, and that is actually cheap, running you $445. So single grain whiskeys are a phenomenal deal. I say that because I'm also a consumer and I drink a lot of whiskey. It is great to find phenomenal deals like that. And I always love different flavors coming from them. So with that, this was distilled in July of 2000 from the Highland region. And it was initially aged in an ex-bourbon barrel before being transferred to a refill ex-rum barrel. So specifics, it was in the bourbon barrels for 18 years before being in a Trinidad rum barrel for 2 years. So this comes in at 62.1%. What's really neat, I don't know, are there any rum drinkers here? Single malt or like single cask rum drinkers? So you guys know. So if you've never had single cask rum, you smell it and it's going to smell like a load of shit. Fried bananas, burnt Band-Aids, the whole 9 yards. It is something completely different from single malt whiskey. But their regions are very specific in what they do. Trinidad, Guyanese, you've got so many different, Venezuelan, whatever it is. There's like 10 different types of single cask rum from these regions. Belize and what else do we have? Jamaican, you've got Barbados and Guyana and Panama. They're all very, very specific in what they smell and taste like. So this being Trinidad, it is very specific in the flavors. So they're not quite as strong or funky as Guyanese or Jamaican, but there is a big rum note. And a lot of times people think rubber when they think of rum. Rubbers and bananas is a very specific note. So thankfully, this was a refill barrel, so you're not getting as much of that in it. But if you mix a single cask, single grain whiskey and like a rum barrel, you get flavors that you'll never find in a single malt whiskey because it's just not possible. So this one is really fun. A lot of times you'll find much fruitier flavors, just in like with it, whether it be sherry or bourbon barrel whiskeys. I have 2 or 3 single barrel or single grain whiskeys here at my house that if anybody ever wants to taste more, 2 of them are my favorite single grains of all time. I've actually have 2 bottles of one of them because I like it so much. We don't get a lot of single grains. So, if you guys really do like them, there's a good amount and they don't sell out quickly. But I vouch for single grain whiskeys.
But this one is sold out.
This one is because this one was on the site for quite a few months. Right now, what do we have available? They're usually all the way at the bottom. Right now, we actually have 0 available, no grain whiskeys at the moment. But when these do come around, they sit for a little while because they're just not as popular amongst people. As you guys said, a lot of you don't know of them or you're used to drinking not very good ones. They have just started to hit markets. You'll see some from Japanese distilleries, some from closed distilleries that just came back and they're just making single grain because it's cheaper to produce. Port Dundas is one. You'll see that hitting like Total Wine shelves. They just came out with some, and it's just not the same. I do highly recommend, again, like I said, if ever anybody ever does an in-person tasting and wants to invite me, I'm happy to bring them. There are some phenomenal single grains that I highly suggest people try because it can be some of the best whiskey you'll taste for the best value. This one I just really like.
50-year-old Carsbridge hiding back there, Zach?
No, we do have older single grains. I think the 2 I have, one is like 27 year and one's like 31 or 32 years. But no.
What are they from?
What's up?
What single grains are they? What?
The ones I have are North British, and I don't know what the other one is.
Cameron,
I'll be honest. I'm not 100% sure.
Gordon or one of those.
Yeah, no, actually, I've never been a big fan of Invergordon, but I've never had any of the good stuff. I usually try to give distilleries. I try a lot of different stuff. Being in the industry I have access to a lot. So I'll usually have friends send samples or something of things so I can try them, just so I can have, a larger palette of flavors. And it just keeps me from buying stuff that I usually buy stuff just to try it. And that's a really bad habit, let me tell you. Yes, sir.
There was a question from Anna asking about the mash bill. I think it was on number 5. Is that correct, Anna? Yes. Did you have the mash bill?
Or is it just malted barley in a column still?
So these are things that this isn't like a bourbon where they're specific in their mash bills. They are very different. They kind of sway. They usually carry one known grain. Let me look this one up and see. But so this one in particular is actually from one of the most exciting distilleries in all of Scotland, as they bottle from like 12 different stills. Let me see. This is actually, again, one of the first ones. This might even be the first one we've gotten from them here in the US. Let me see if they talk about what their main grain is. So this one, they just say it right here. There's so many pop-ups. This one of their in-house is carefully distilled using only the finest malted barley in a continuous still. So I would go out on a limb to say that's probably what they do in most of their stuff. But again, this distillery, when we talk about it at the end, if you're familiar with the distillery, one of the most versatile distilleries in the world. So they could go left or right. They can put whatever they want in it because they have access to so much. But typically we don't get exact mash bills, but we can give a designation of what it could more likely be, just from what they typically produced. So this one we'll go with, it's probably just mostly malted barley.
We recently tasted this distillery.
Benno.
It's fantastic. I'm just letting you know, like, we release multiple lines from this distillery, all under one roof, and it's some of the most exciting and most affordable whiskey, even in the single malt market. So this one's very exciting.
So I've been Zachary. I'm just kind of making an observation. I'm not sure if you would agree with it or if it aimed. I've started to nose number 6, and for some reason, I feel like I want to finish 5 before I jump into 6, because going back to the other expressions after 6 might just ruin
Yes.
my palate for the rest of them.
Possibly. Now, mind you, this is 62.1%. So this is a bit higher. So you might want to add some water, but yes, our last example is a peated whiskey. Obviously, you guys have drank enough whiskey to know, one, I'd put it in a different glass if you're using the same one. But two, I would not drink too much of it if you are looking to go back to the others, because it is peated.
Which is weird for this distillery.
Yes, it is weird. But we do get specifically do get a lot of their peated offerings. And it is exciting because it is not normal and it is so crazy different from what they typically do. So it is very exciting. But I would suggest not drinking too much of it before anything else. Obviously, you guys know your palates better than I, but just a forewarning. On to that. We are on the last whiskey. This is cask 10.216. And as you see, this is green. This is our peated line.
I'm sorry, push.
Yeah.
Sorry, I pressed send and I didn't mean to.
Oh, you're fine. So this one is our peated. There is a lightly peated light green and a heavily peated darker green. So this one is the 216th cask. Like I said earlier, this is 216 casks that we have had from them. We do not get that many from them. So this is one that we used to get a ton of, but now we get a few of. Typically not peated whiskey. Most of their line is unpeated. However, they do have what they call Stoicia, which is their peated line. This one is called Creoles and Harbors, and the tasting notes say maple syrup pancakes, lemon toffee, and custard Danish, but mainly Creoles and Harbors, grilled prawns and fish, and lighting beach bonfires. So this one is only 7 years old. It is on the younger end. Comes in at 60.5%. Was distilled in October of 2013 from Isla, and it was originally in an ex-bourbon hogshead for, doesn't tell me. Oh, up here, for 4 years before the last 3 years being in a second filled toasted hogshead. So again, unpeated distillery typically, but this is their peated malt. If you smell it, it is very much Isla peat, but it does not overwhelm your palate. You're not getting smacked in the face by iodine and medicinals, Band-Aids and tar, but it leaves a little bit of room for exploration. There's a bit of a seaside influence. There's a little bit of kind of the Isla influence, but all in all, again, it's not something I would drink all of if you want to go back to the others because it will overpower them. Sounds good. But yeah, so what you'll notice a lot, as someone did mention, a lot of our peated stuff we'll get from distilleries that don't peat stuff, typically don't release peated stuff, or their peated stuff goes in blends, not typically released there, like as a distillery bottling. This is one of those that we do get most of the stuff peated. I can't remember the last time. I think we've done it once or twice where we've released one from this distillery that was actually not peated in a different flavor profile. So this one is super fun to play with. This is one of those that when you try them, when you look at them on our website, you never know what you're going to get because they can be in such a large variety of flavor profiles. Last year we had one that was heavily peated. It was like 6 years old, like 65%. And a lot of the tasting notes talked about like hell burning and tar and tractor tires and gasoline and lit matches. And it was in your face. And then we had one that was like sherried and tasted nothing of Isla, come out like a month or two later. So they're super cool, super exciting. And they really allow your imagination to go there, to go wherever it wants to, because you're not predetermining what it's going to taste like before you taste it. So that's always fun. But with that, that is all 6 whiskeys of the night. Hopefully I answered enough questions about the whiskeys themselves. Obviously, always happy to talk about them some more right when we finish up. But so that is all our whiskeys. I did try to pick a spread big enough for you guys to kind of experience. This is half of our flavor profiles right here. So there are only 6 that you guys have not tasted. I did try to choose a wide variety of ages and cask types, just so you guys could have a bit of an, taste of what we can do in many different forms. Like I said, we have gins and rums and all that kind of stuff if you guys are into that. I don't have too much of that on hand. We only get like 1 or 2 bottles of them. But they are very fun and exciting. I think I have one funky rum if anybody ever wanted to taste it. But otherwise, I hope you guys enjoyed. Please do let me know.
Great job. I think you did a really well on picking these 6 different expressions. I mean, they were very different. I think number 4 was going to be my favorite. Then 5 came in, and because there was a poll that Vadim put out. I'm not sure if you saw it.
I saw it. I did not answer, but I did see it.
Vote. Go ahead. You tried them. Vote. You have an opinion.
The
3 more people.
Vadim is going to ask you a question.
Yes.
Jordan, did you want to say something?
Oh yeah, sorry. I just had a quick question. Now that we're sort of past, I didn't want to derail us. So I know you said 95% is Scotch.
Yes.
But the other 5%, if you do additional aging, is it brought from wherever it is, meaning if it's American rum, wherever, to Scotland and aged additionally there and bottled there? Or how does it work if you source it for somewhere outside of the United Kingdom?
Yeah. So I would say 95% is whiskey, not just Scotch. No, by all means, it's what I'm here for. So everything we do has to be bottled and aged a little bit in the UK. No matter what it is, be it rums, bourbons, Australian whiskeys, they all have to go over to Scotland and then be bottled there. You will see that on our bourbon prices. Our bourbons sell out faster than anything else we ever have, but they are priced the way they are because they come here. Ewan and Kai come here. You go to Kentucky, they go to Arkansas, Texas, you name it. They make whiskey. They've been there. And then we have to get those barrels shipped back to the UK. They do age there, no specific time frame. Sometimes, a month. Other times it ages it longer, but it does have to be bottled there. So no matter what it is all bottled in the UK. That is why when I said earlier, when it comes to the aging process, we don't always know exactly how long it has been in our care versus where it's from. So, if you ask us, we don't always know. The UK keeps all of that information, and sometimes they don't even know. That's why you'll see something like a refill sherry, but it doesn't say what kind of sherry because it could have passed through many hands before it made it to us. So if it was used 5 times at multiple distilleries, they don't have to tell us if it's PX or Oloroso or any other types of sherry or what kind of port it is or what kind of wine it is. We just know what we have and how long and how old it is. So that is one thing that if you are really nerdy and geeky about things and you love an Islay whiskey that's born and bred and aged on Islay, which not much of it is, not to break anybody's heart that thinks they know it all. It's not always, but it does play a huge part in the end product of the whiskey, which is why there are so many people that love specific distilleries because they know where it's aged or the area has a big influence on the maturation process and the end product. So that is one thing we just don't always know, but we will do what we can to answer the question for you. We will email Scotland and ask headquarters if they have more information on it. We'll see if they have specific information from the distillery or the last owner of the cask, just so we can try and figure out as much as possible.
And then how many employees are
I saw a little bit more here.
So here in the US, not a lot. I think there's like 8 or 9 of us, but back in Scotland, they have a massive team, everywhere from bartenders and cooks. They've got a customer service team, member services. They've got a board of directors. They've got a whole team of people over there. There's warehouse guys that help with the upkeep of the warehouse itself. So Kai and Ewan can do the tasting and make sure everything's well put together. We work with research societies that are based in Scotland. There's so many people that do work behind the scenes there. and then all of the other branches around the world. I can't really say we have a big complete number because I don't think everybody works the exact same or has all of that information. But our team here, the mainstays that you'll always be in contact with or see are me, Jenna, Ben, and Tom. Those are the 4 people you will see or know of. And then we have Brianna, who does most of our logistical things on the back end. So you may receive a call or email from her every once in a while, but she is not front facing. She does all of the hard work on the back end. Then we have a small team that does like our graphics and works with partnerships. Vadim met Paige, but they're not front facing or anything. So we're a small team, but we all wear a lot of hats and we all have our hands all over the place. So you know that we have all the information available to us that we can physically get. The one exception is old stuff. Anything before like 2012, record keeping, I guess, was not very important back then. So if you're looking for a bottle you bought at auction that might be 20 years old, we don't know we can get that info, but everything else we'll do our best to reach out to who we can to get answers for you. So anybody else have any questions for the time being? Or any questions that you want to ask off the recording? Or
We'll get to the off recording hangout in a second, but
okay, yeah.
As David pointed out, we all did vote for their favorite expression of the
I'm
night.
excited to see.
I'm getting a lot of hate mail behind the scenes saying they can't pick one, that these are all good, and death threats that they can't buy them. You guys are warned, these are all really good. But Zach, fantastic spread. I love that these were all so different.
Thank you.
They were all amazing, which were as expected, but we discussed doing something that really speaks to the character of the brand and kind of a full spectrum of what we can expect. And I think we succeeded that today. So thank you so much for this lineup. And now the question is for you. Do you know what the favorite of tonight's tasting was? Can you guess?
So there's a lot that goes into this. I have worked with and talked to many members and many fellow whiskey nerds. So there's going to be 2 that are probably going to take the cake, specifically because of what they are. The third may take the cake simply because of the age, but I don't think that plays too much of a part. So with that being said, I'm going to say the top 2 vote getters are going to be the 10 and the 30. And then I'm going to go out on a limb, say third is 42. 4th is the 90 or the 63, and then 5th is going to be the 96th. And then I'm going to give the G9 last just because not as many people know about it. But that's what I'm going to say. So, and that's not personal either.
All right. That's an interesting lineup. So are you ready for the results?
I would love to see them. I want to see how wrong I am.
Yeah.
I think G is going to be last. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So number 1 with 6 votes is 10, which is the last one, the peated one, which I didn't know we had so many peat lovers. G9 was second with 5 votes. Number 2, our second expression, which got third 42. Place, is 42. Yeah, 4 votes. 2 votes for 30 and 63, and then 1 vote for 96.
Yep.
So all over the place.
I read
these out because people can't see the poll at home when watching this. So
yeah. No, absolutely. That's awesome. It does typically the peated expressions are the most favorite because it's not a cult, but most people that like peat love peat, and it's always going to be their favorite. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's just, preference is preference. It does surprise me that the grain ranks so high. It's not typical. I love it. Like I said, I love them. I love sharing, things, but it's also the most different and usually the most surprising because people don't know what to expect. And then throw in the rum barrel and, your mind is boggled because you've never probably had anything like it. The 30 surprises me, I have to say. Usually people go nuts over sherry. So it's usually like, I just click it because it's the easiest. The 96, that's typical because people are not used to it. They're not used to what it tastes like. But yeah, no, that's awesome. It's awesome to see everybody spread too. It's like none of them got 0 votes.
Yeah, there's
maybe a pity vote, but awesome. Well, no, I'm really glad to see what you guys thought. It was awesome.
For sure. So, well, that said, I want to thank you very much for your time. I want to thank all of the group for being here. Not kicking anybody out. We're going to hang out, but we're going to hit stop on the recording. So thank you, everyone. This is hopefully the first of many events to come with Zach and the society. So thank you for tonight. Cheers, everyone.
Yeah. Cheers, guys. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it.